Welcome back, ninjas. 7 Caillou, let's go. Help Suzuki complete his chores. Suzuki has a long list of chores required to keep the monastery in good order. Each chore can be completed independently of the others and assigned to any student. Knowing there will always be an even number of chores and that the number of students isn't limited, Suzuki needs to assign 2 chores to each student in a way that which minimizes the total duration of the day's work. For example, with the list of chores, this array full of values, he'll need 6 students because there are 12 total, and each needs, remember before I said, what was it, two jobs? Yeah, needs to assign 2 chores to each student. He'll need 6 students whose total workload will be 7, 8, 8, 10, 10, 11. And they show you how they got these sums. 7 is 5 plus 2. The first 8 is 4 plus 4. The second one 6 plus 2. The 10 is 8 and 2. The 10 is 9 and 1. And the 11 is 9 and 2. So notice that these total work times for each student are listed in ascending order. In this case, the maximum workload is minimized to 11, which is the cost of the highest job, which should be the last entry in your output array. Keep in mind that 2 chores must be assigned to each student involved. Input, output, input. So the chores list is going to be between 10 and 30 inclusive, and it's always even. You could check that. Output, array of workloads in ascending order. We've got some related katas that we will not worry about. But I think that's clear. Go ahead and think of a strategy for taking an unordered input and sort of trying to minimize the sum of any 2 of those elements. That should get you going. And you know that you need to pause like a true ninja with honor. Pause and try this one on your own first, and then come on back. I'll get into it. First things, I'm going to call this chore times. A little more descriptive in my opinion. You could check the length, right? You could say if chore times dot length modulo 2 is not equal to 0, meaning, what does that mean? It means it's not even. Throw new argument exception, or whatever exception you like. Chore times must be of even length. Something that will tip you off to the problem. Okay, that was optional. First things first, so my strategy for sort of minimizing the worst case, the student who gets the longest job, right? My option for that is going to be to sort this input, right? And then I'll sort of pair up the highest value with the lowest value, the next highest value with the next lowest value, etc., and work my way inwards like that. Because clearly, right, the max value and the min value are sort of the best you can do. If you add anything other than the min value to the max value, you're ending up with a longer time. That's sort of the strategy there. So do you remember how to sort arrays? I'll use the array method sort, and you pass it your collection that you want sorted. Good, so at this point we'll just work with this example, right? It would come out to be, from this it would go to 1, then probably 4 2s, and then it looks like a couple 4s, a 5, 6, 8, 9, something like that, right? In ascending order we should have at that point. Good, and now I'm going to kind of pair these things up in the manner that I described. I'm going to make an output array, right, for our result. We know our contract says we have to return an integer array of the times, and I'll go ahead and make that. I'll call it an integer array. I often use the word result for what I return. Name it however you like, and then we can say for that new int array, and we have to specify a size. Well, what do you know about the size? You know you have n number of chores. You know that it's 2 students, or I'm sorry, 2 chores per student. So if we take chore times divided by 2, that will give us our output array. It's half the size, right? Good. So now let's go over this collection and sort of match things up. But because I'm doing pairs, I don't have to iterate over the entire collection. I'll show you how I do this. I equals 0, I is less than, I suppose we could do it the same. Yeah, why not? Chore times length over 2. I mean, instead of repeating this, right, you might want to say num students equals this. And if you do that once, you can do that math calculation, though it's not very demanding, but you only have to do it once. So let's do that. That's a little better, I think. And plus plus I. Good. Curly braces will define the scope of our for loop. Now what I'll do here, I'm going to make a couple other integer variables. I'm going to call one front, set that to 0, and I'm going to make a last variable, and I'm going to point this at chore times dot length -1 because we use 0-based indexing, right? So this last is pointing at the very last element in the input array, and front would be pointing at the very first element in that array. So then with this structure, that's why I'm going to grab these values in pairs, and that's why I only have to go over half the collection, which is the same size as the number of students, right? We set that up to chore times over 2. So I will say result I equals, right, it's the sum of the 2 chores that each student gets. Each element in this result array represents the total work that each student will do. So I'll say chore times front plus chore times last. Okay, and then don't forget, if you don't update these values, you're gonna give the same times to every student in the output array, which is wrong. I'm gonna use the fancy postfix notation, which means execute this whole line, and then when you're done doing all your math, then you can go ahead and bump front up 1. So that's nice. You could, instead of doing it this way, right, you could have just said, made another line and done this, but it's a nice shorthand you can do here. And similarly, you might imagine last needs to go backwards. And it's very important that you use the postfix notation, right? What's postfix? Well, it's the opposite of prefix, right? If you do it this way, it will increment last, or I'm sorry, decrement last before attempting to do all this work. And we don't want that. Similarly, you wouldn't want the prefix notation on front here, bad stuff. Well, in this case, you know, sometimes it's good. So I'm specifically using the postfix notation, putting it after the variable name. So good. Those values will get, the front will get bumped up each time, last will get decremented, and you can see how you kind of start at the ends of the array and grab pairs, working your way slowly to the middle until you've grabbed everything. So that should populate our result array. And you'll notice if I just try to return like this, it doesn't always do what you want, because the pairings, you won't always get the max value with the min and the max value here. So this isn't a good example, but if you looked at some of the other examples, you could see that if you pick, you know, values in your array that have quite a range of values in them, you can make it so that these middle numbers, you know, were also very high. And maybe you just had one small value at the front, and then in the middle you have a bunch of values that are very close to the max value, and so you can get sums that are greater than that first pairing. But just so you can see that, I'll try doing it this way. We should get something wrong. Okay, so I just made an error. Let's go to line 11. What did I do? Int students. Okay. Operator divides cannot be applied to operands of type integer. Oh, sure. I see what I did. So yeah, chore times is an integer array, right? It doesn't make sense to divide that by 2. What we want to divide by 2 is its length, which is an integer value, an integral value. Let's hit our test. And so yeah, see you hit the green on the first test, but then you had an example here with basic test 2, which should be listed down here. Where's basic? There it is. Where they were expecting 7 at the first index, and we had 10 because we had 9 and 1 for our first value, right? And so 10 got placed there, and then yeah, you can pair them all up if you want to check how there was probably a 5 and a 2. That's the lowest pairing in here. That's what it looks like. So 7 should have been first, right? So we didn't necessarily do anything wrong. And if you don't believe me, you could, you could check what you're doing. Console right line, we could say result I, something like this. So you can just make sure that you're getting all the sums that you should have. So look, you can see the order right, 10, 11, 10, 8, 7, 8. You can see that it's the same values listed here, they're just in the wrong order. So one option you could do is just another array sort if you want. I know it's kind of ugly sorting twice, even though it's a different collection. Array sort result, and that should sort ascending by default. Green can attempt. Green, good. Or if you wanted to bring some link into the action, you could do something like, do you remember order by? Pretty sure we've seen that before. And you can use a lambda to process this however you want. I'm not going to do anything. I want to order by the numbers themselves. I'll just do that. I'll hit to array, because remember these link methods like order by, they return an enumerable collection, and that doesn't match the signature here of this method, the output type, which is integer array. So you can add that to array at the end if you want. I would expect this to be the same. Oh sure, so if you want to use length, then you gotta bring in link, right? It's fair. And there's your green. I'll hit the attempt. We don't declare victory until the attempt is green. So yeah, I'll just go back to the array sort one and return results. We don't need the print statements there. And in case I haven't mentioned that before, since I only have one line of logic in the for loop, if you have just a single line, you don't need to enclose it with curly braces. Some people do anyway. It's kind of provisional in case you come back and add something later, they're already there. It's a personal choice, or if you're on a team, use what your team likes. So yeah, I think I'll probably submit mine like this. I don't think I'll win any efficiency awards, but that's all right. I don't know why I hit test. I should have hit attempt. There we go. Okay. So yeah, you know what to do. Submit, get your honor points. Go ahead and look at other people's solutions. Learn from me. Learn from other ninjas in the community, and whatever else you find. So yeah, good stuff. I'd like to see your solution if you feel like sharing. Otherwise, hit me up with questions, comments, criticisms, whatever you got. Otherwise, I'll see you in another video. Thank you for watching.